At my housewarming, my sister announced publicly, Anna's $960,000 house is perfect for my 3 kids, before I could answer. Mom pointed toward the stairs. Pack your bags. Your sister needs this place more than you do. 30 guests went silent, 14 years earlier. Those same words had left me sleeping in my car through a Boston winter, but this time, I wasn't 18, broke, or begging to be chosen. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and opened the agreement they had both signed. Then I looked at Mom and whispered, "You should have checked which confession I kept before trying to throw me out again." Before I dive into the story, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Let me know if you've ever been in this kind of situation. Your advice reminds me I'm not alone. My name is Anna Parker. I was 32 years old, a software engineer and technology entrepreneur. And that house was the first place I had ever owned that truly felt safe. It was a 4-bedroom Craftsman outside Boston, with warm hardwood floors, tall windows, a deep front porch, and an old maple tree shading the backyard. I had paid $960,000 for it and spent 8 months restoring every room. But the price was not what made it valuable to me. It was the key in my hand. It was knowing no one could change the locks, take my money, or decide I no longer belonged there. Years earlier, I had helped build a small technology business with my best friend, Rachel Collins. We had survived rejected pitches, unpaid weekends, cheap dinners, and years when neither of us knew whether the business would last another month. When we eventually sold our ownership stake, I invested most of what I earned. Buying the house was the first time I allowed myself to spend money on something that represented more than survival. The housewarming was supposed to mark that new beginning. Rachel arrived early to help with the food and decorations. Susan Miller, the teacher who had once given me a place to sleep when I had nowhere else to go, came with flowers. My father, Robert, stood awkwardly near the kitchen, still learning how to be part of my life again. They were the people who had shown up when showing up mattered. My mother, Linda, and my older sister Megan had not. I had barely spoken to either of them in years. Still, I invited them. Part of me wanted closure. Another part, the part I rarely admitted existed, wanted my mother to walk through the door, see what I had built, and finally say she was proud of me. They arrived with Megan's husband, Daniel, and their 3 children. The moment Megan entered, her eyes moved past me and swept across the foyer, the staircase, and the living room. Linda hugged me briefly, then asked whether I really lived there alone. I laughed as though it were harmless. During the tour, Megan ran her fingers along the countertops, opened a hallway closet without asking, and stared through the windows at the backyard. Then she stopped outside the guest rooms and asked the first question that made my stomach tighten. "Which room are you actually using?" Megan smiled as if she had asked something perfectly normal. "I'm serious," she said. "You have 4 bedrooms. Do you even go upstairs?" Daniel glanced at her. "Megan, what?" She opened the nearest door and leaned inside. "I'm just curious." The room held a queen bed, a reading chair, and a narrow desk beneath the window. Megan stepped in without waiting for permission, checked the closet, then crossed the hall to the next room. "This one gets better light," she said. "Chloe would love it." Chloe's face tightened. "Mom." "Stop!" Megan laughed. "We're only playing." But she was not playing. By the time we reached the backyard, she had asked about the school district, property taxes, and how often I traveled for work. Linda kept adding little comments in that soft, reasonable voice she used whenever she wanted something to sound inevitable. A house this size needs children. It must feel empty when Anna is here alone. Some people need space more than others. Each sentence landed with the weight of something I had heard my entire childhood. Megan needs it more. Anna can manage. Anna is stronger. Noah raced toward the maple tree and shouted that he wanted the room facing the yard. Ethan stared at the ground. Chloe folded her arms and refused to look at me. I ended the tour and guided everyone downstairs. A few minutes later, I saw Linda and Megan whispering near the kitchen. Megan glanced toward the living room, where my guests had begun gathering for the toast. Then she asked Rachel when I planned to speak. That was when I understood they were waiting for an audience. I should have stopped everything right there. Instead, I told myself I was imagining the worst because of the past. I thanked everyone for coming. I thanked Rachel for building a business with me when we had almost nothing. I thanked Susan for giving me a safe place when I needed one. I thanked the friends who had stayed through the years when success was only an idea. Linda's smile faded a little more with every name. When I finished, Megan stepped beside me and placed one hand on my arm. As Anna's sister, she began, I think family should come first. Daniel straightened. Megan told the room that his income had fallen, their lease was ending, and the children needed stability. She said I traveled often, lived alone, and could easily afford something smaller. Then she looked around my living room and delivered the line she had clearly rehearsed. Your $960,000 house is perfect for my kids. Daniel stared at her. That is not what we discussed. Megan ignored him. Linda stepped forward, calm and certain. Your sister needs this home more than you do, she said. You can move into a condo before their lease ends. No, I said. Linda's expression hardened. Pack your bags. The words struck harder than they should have. The room blurred. For one terrible second, the polished floor beneath my feet became cracked kitchen tile, and the champagne glass in my hand became the handle of an old suitcase. I was 18 again, that night. I had come home from work expecting nothing more than leftover dinner and maybe a quiet birthday. Instead, I found Linda and Megan seated at the kitchen table with financial papers spread between them. My college fund, nearly $80,000 my parents had promised would pay for my education, was being redirected toward Megan's new house. She was 26, already raising Ethan and Chloe, and pregnant with Noah. Linda said 3 children needed space more than I needed an expensive university. You have scholarships, she told me. You can take loans. You can attend school nearby. I had spent years working while maintaining perfect grades. That money was the one promise I believed my family would keep. So, for the first time, I said no. Linda's face went cold. Accept what this family needs, she said, or pack your bags. I packed. I took my clothes, laptop, identification, and whatever fit inside one suitcase. Then I stood by the front door, waiting for someone to stop me. No one did, for nearly 2 weeks. I slept in my car through a Boston winter. My coat became my blanket. My work uniform became my pillow. I held my keys in one hand while I slept, waking whenever headlights crossed the windshield. Every morning, I fixed my hair, covered the exhaustion beneath my eyes, and went to class as though I still had a home. Susan eventually found me asleep in the library. She gave me food, a room, and the first kindness I had ever received without a demand attached to it. A year later, the second betrayal surfaced. When I applied for an apartment, I discovered nearly $50,000 in debt connected to accounts I had never opened. The money had helped cover housing expenses and bills for Megan's family. I reported the fraud and froze my credit. Linda begged me not to push for criminal charges. She said Megan had children. She said one investigation could destroy all of them. I agreed to stop only after Linda and Megan signed a written acknowledgement. They admitted using my information without permission and promised to repay what they owed. They made a few payments, then they stopped, after disputes and partial removals. I still spent almost 3 years paying roughly $20,000 in settlements, fees, and costs to repair my credit. I worked mornings, studied during the day, and coded late into the night, years later. Rachel and I built a technology business from a cramped apartment. We survived rejection after rejection until the company finally succeeded. I sold my share at 30 and bought my home the following year. The voices in my living room returned. Linda was still staring at me as though my answer belonged to her, but I was no longer 18. The house was legally mine. The debt was documented, and the confession they had signed was saved on my phone. I asked Rachel to take the children outside. Then I looked at my mother, smiled, and reached into my pocket. I let the silence stretch until even the music from the kitchen seemed too loud. Then I looked at Megan. I want everyone to hear this clearly, I said. You want me to leave my house so your family can move in permanently. Megan lifted her chin. It is the most sensible solution. You live alone. We have 3 children. Linda folded her arms. Family helps the person who needs it most. Daniel turned toward his wife. You told me you wanted to ask whether Anna could help us temporarily. Megan barely looked at him. I'm thinking long term. I nodded once. Then no one misunderstood. A few guests began edging toward the hallway. They can stay, I said. You made this public, but no one records anything, and no one interrupts me. Rachel returned from the backyard and stood near the door. I took out my phone and connected it to the television. Linda's confidence flickered. What are you doing? I opened the document I had kept for 13 years. The private details were covered, but the date, amount, acknowledgement, and signatures remained visible. I enlarged the first page. Remember when you kicked me out at 18? Linda gave a sharp laugh. We did not kick you out. You chose to leave because you were being dramatic. I swiped to the next section. Nearly $50,000 appeared on the screen. Below it was a written acknowledgement that my personal information had been used without permission to create debt tied to Megan's family expenses. At the bottom were two signatures, Linda Parker, Megan Brooks. Daniel stepped closer. Megan, he said slowly. What is that? She stared at the screen. Mom handled the paperwork. I was overwhelmed. I had children. You signed it, Daniel said. Megan's voice rose. Because Anna was threatening to destroy our family. I was 19, I replied. I was trying to rent an apartment and discovered I owed money I had never borrowed. Robert moved forward, his face pale. I knew about the college fund, he said. I did not know about this. That does not make you innocent. I told him. You knew one daughter's future was financing the other daughter's life. And you stayed silent. He lowered his eyes. You're right, Linda pointed at the screen. We paid some of it back. You made a few payments, then stopped. I spent almost 3 years paying settlements, fees, and the cost of repairing my credit while working and attending college. Megan's eyes filled with tears. We were desperate. Desperation explains asking for help, I said. It does not excuse using someone else's identity. Linda's face hardened. Everything we did pushed you to become successful. I looked directly at her. I survived what you did. I did not succeed because of it. Then I finished the sentence I had carried since she told me to pack. I bought this house with the money from the company I built while paying off the debt you put in my name. Megan shook her head. So this is revenge? You invited us here to humiliate us. I invited you because part of me hoped you had changed. You chose to announce that my home belonged to you. My children need stability, and I will help protect their future. I said, I'll establish education funds that cannot be used for personal expenses. But you will not live here. You will not receive cash from me, and you will not use your children to claim what belongs to someone else. Daniel looked at Megan. Are there other debts? Her silence answered him. I'll review every account, bill, and loan, he said. Panic crossed her face. Linda stepped between us. Anna, stop. You are tearing this family apart. No. I am refusing to disappear so everyone else can stay comfortable. I disconnected my phone. This house is not available. You will both leave now. Do not return without an invitation. Any future financial request must be made in writing. Linda grabbed her purse. You are choosing money over family. I am choosing a family that does not require one person to surrender everything. Megan followed her toward the door, pale and shaking. No one applauded, no one laughed. I had not wanted a spectacle. I wanted the truth to remain after they ran out of excuses. At the threshold, Linda turned as though she expected me to weaken. I held the door open for the first time. She was the one leaving, and I was the one who decided whether that door would ever open again. 3 days after the housewarming, Daniel asked to meet me at a quiet coffee shop downtown. He looked like he had not slept. I owe you an apology, he said. I benefited from money that was never ours, and I never asked enough questions. Would you have believed me if I had told you 14 years ago? I asked. He stared into his coffee. I want to say yes, but back then, I cared more about appearances than truth. It was not comforting, but it was honest. After the party, Daniel had reviewed every account, bill and a loan connected to their household. What he found was worse than the document on my phone. There were credit cards near their limits, unpaid bills hidden in a separate email account, and loans Megan had never fully explained. even after Daniel's income dropped. She had continued spending as if nothing had changed. The debt had climbed into the hundreds of thousands. Daniel had contacted an attorney. He planned to separate from Megan while they worked out custody and finances. "I'm not asking what I should do," he said. "I wanted you to know the truth. It has to be your decision." I told him, "Not mine." Megan moved back into Linda's house with the children. The arrangement became tense almost immediately. Linda complained about the noise, the lack of privacy, and Megan's spending. The same woman who insisted I did not need space was suddenly furious that 5 people were crowding her home. I did not celebrate the irony. The children were innocent. I stayed in contact through Daniel. Ethan began coming over on Saturdays so I could help him with programming. Chloe joined a local science program after I encouraged her to apply. Noah and I spent an afternoon at a natural history museum while he explained every dinosaur display twice. I never criticized their mother in front of them. When Ethan finally asked why the adults were fighting, I told him, "Sometimes people we love make serious choices. Children are not responsible for fixing them." I also kept my promise. I created 3 education funds with strict protections. The money could only be used for tuition, books, and approved school expenses. Payments would go directly to the institution. No parent could withdraw cash. My education fund had been taken from me. Theirs would not be. Robert continued showing up. He called when he promised, accepted my anger without defending himself, and never asked me to forget the years he missed. I was not ready to forgive him completely, but for the first time. He was doing the work instead of offering excuses. Linda was different. Her messages shifted from anger to tears, then back to blame. She said families should forgive. She said I had embarrassed her. She said my success proved her tough love had worked. I responded only when she spoke respectfully. The moment she tried to guilt me, I ended the conversation. Megan started therapy and found a job. Progress was slow. Some days she admitted what she had done. Other days she blamed Linda, Daniel, or me for refusing to rescue her. I let her struggle. A year later, she brought the children to my house for lunch, before leaving. Megan paused in the foyer. "This house belongs to you," she said quietly. "You earned it." I did not hug her or pretend everything was healed. I simply said, "That is the first honest thing you have ever said about it." For once, she did not argue. That evening, I sat on my porch while Ethan, Chloe, and Noah laughed in the yard. At 18, I had watched one door close behind me and believed I had lost my family. At 32, I understood the truth. A home is not the place where people demand your sacrifice. It is the place where your boundaries are respected. This door was mine now, and I alone decided who entered. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone who believed family entitled them to everything you had? Share your story below, and subscribe for more family betrayal stories.